Okay, started recording. This is Greg Cook with Credit Unions Forum, and I have Brandon Jensen with me. We were just kind of chit-chatting a few minutes before we started recording. Sharing with me, he's in Southern California.
Correct.
Um, I just in networking on the Credit Unions Forum side of things, I had seen a reposting that you had about attracting and retaining top talent. And what you had on there was from San Diego Imperial Network. Now, when we were talking, you were saying you were on the board with that. And I'll open it up to you to explain a little bit more about what that is, because I kind of want to get on what your guys' topic was. But why don't you share with everybody what San Diego Imperial Network is?
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great question, something I'm very proud of. I sit on the board of the San Diego Imperial Network. It really is a network of California's credit unions. For those that are in California, really most states, the league, as we as we call it. So, what we are subsets in various geographic locations, um, an offshoot of the greater California's Credit Unions League. So we report all of our financial data does report up to the parent league. But yeah, we try to put together educational resources for our credit union peers, as well as the vendors that act as an extension of our service, where we have a service offering gap, those various QSOs or credit union specific vendors. We call them friends of the network out here in California. So from, the Bay Area down to where we are here in San Diego, which is about as close to Tijuana as you can get, there are multiple networks of California's credit unions, and we all operate with some guidance from the league. And we participate in advocacy. We try to bring value add events forward that our credit union peers can join and learn, and our vendor friends can sponsor and be seen by decision makers. And every now and again, we like to sprinkle in a little bit of fun, whether that's an axe throwing or a pub crawl or whatever you can do to promote camaraderie within our movement.
Sure. So, you had one of your, so is it considered like a chapter part of the California Credit Union League?
That's exactly what it is. Yeah, we used to actually be called chapters. The league reimagined, re-envisioned the chapter framework, and they revamped the name to call them networks. So that was actually a little bit of a learning curve, strictly on nomenclature alone. But we were chapters for many, many years. When I joined, it was still called the chapter. Now they call them networks.
Alrighty. So the event that you just recently had, I was wanting to kind of get with you shortly, without too much time lapsing, so I could kind of pick your brain things that were fresh in your mind. So the flyer that went out was attracting and retaining top talent. Just for collaboration purposes, people probably, different parts that might tune in. That's a clear hot topic within the credit union space, especially with the succession planning piece that the NCUA has added recently. Matter of fact, a conference I'm actually going to here, one of the sessions is actually on that succession planning piece right there. Something we just did in the credit union that I'm with just
Mm-hmm.
with a few months ago. But why don't you kind of share with everybody what exactly you guys reviewed? I know we're not going to be able to pack in a whole day's event into the next 10 minutes or so, but just some of the highlights.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I agree with you. It's a hot topic, certainly succession planning. All these various AI vendors out there, and all these credit unions that have conflicting, agendas, and they want to push in this arms race towards technology. There's a lot of changes that are happening in credit unions, so it's not only the succession planning, but it's also it starts with the onboarding, or even what they call the pre-boarding of the employee, making sure that they have a good sense of the culture, they have the education, they know where they fit. When you talk about succession planning, they know where they fit as far as a career path, they have something to aspire to. But to my point about change, it's also managing employees' expectations and not shifting the goalpost um, in a rapidly changing environment. The concept that we brought for this particular panel, it was a panel discussion, was okay, we've got all of these credit unions in our network, and they range, from around 100 million, all the way up to, just a hair under 10 billion. That's excluding Navy, who's also in our market, and they're the big boys.
Sure.
But the thought was, okay, when do you build? When do you buy? When do you partner? Are there any quick wins in the learning and development space or the employee culture and retaining space that can be scaled for smaller credit unions? Is there a place where smaller credit unions can start if they're not prepared to purchase a large solution? We had large credit unions in our panel that would maybe benefit from buying a solution, but we brought someone that is a fractional, like learning and development, change management, succession planning leader that could be hired or outsourced for smaller credit unions. We had a middle market credit union that was really expert on building a proprietary internal framework on a very tight budget. So, a place to start, a place to build to. And then we brought the learning and development vice president from North Island Credit Union, a division of California Credit Union, where they have a more robust and mature learning and development platform, many purchased solutions, some proprietary build, some quick wins. And we had a lot of discussion across 5 prompts just to see the various takes and things that credit unions could take away from really at any size of credit union.
Okay. The clearly from 100 million up to 10 billion, you've got a wide range. I tend to kind of keep a lot of the scope that for collaborating on the small to mid-size credit unions. What was some of the common denominators that you saw within that say 100 to 250 million space?
I saw I did see a lot of engagement from our smaller credit unions. I think that they had more to gain from actually being in attendance because they were very interested in getting really a life cycle, a view of an employee's career journey with their particular credit union. And a couple of them didn't really know where to start. I think part of the framework of the network space is that the larger credit unions, we are here to be maybe a larger voice for the smaller credit unions. So the larger credit unions still showed up, even if they have some of these processes and plans in place. Hopefully it reiterated that what they're doing is the right thing to do, but it really is in support of those that didn't know as much where to start and to cherry pick some sweet ideas from maybe the more mature, the credit unions with a more mature learning and development program.
Did you find any common denominators? Obviously, you had attracting and then you also had retaining top talent. So clearly the attracting, I guess, with attracting talent, especially these days with fintechs and these types of organizations that can offer possibly salaries that credit unions can't, and more specifically, maybe even some enticements like stock options and things like that. What kind of conversations came about from attracting top talent today?
Yeah, there were some good common denominators. That's a great question. One of the big things that I heard, and it was a new term to me, which I may have already used today, but I heard it from multiple panelists, this term pre-boarding. So as opposed to onboarding, which is kind of next step, but there seemed to be great importance placed on ensuring that first day, first week, first month is loaded with the appropriate touch points, the appropriate comfort that employees have made a good choice as the credit union who they've selected as their employer. So it's reaching out ahead of time, making sure that managers have frequent touch points leading up to first day, making sure workspace is ready. I heard some credit unions talking about day one, we have usually our CEO or a head executive come in and meet with the staff. You get to see the decision makers, the change makers, those that are really kind of moving the needle in the organization. Just to re-solidify that, having an extensive onboarding process was a recurring theme. One thing that came up, and I actually jotted it down as we were talking, is just having a clear career pathing model in some capacity, setting real expectations of what it would take to get to the next level. And this I found interesting because it brought up an additional phrase that I had never heard before. And they were talking about people's career journey. They said sometimes it's a ladder, sometimes it's a lattice. And I didn't quite get the reference. I'm sure as a seasoned executive, you got it right away. But then someone they use the analogy of a rock climbing wall. And sometimes you have to reach this way to get this way. Pardon me, moving my arms all over your camera.
Well, no, true.
But I got goosebumps in the moment because I said, I have to come back to you, Gabby, because when you said ladder or lattice, I didn't know the terminology. This Justin's explanation of the rock wall put that into perspective. You'd love to shoot straight to the top, but even if you're kind of ping-ponging and making your way, as long as the expectations are clear and defined, not that it guarantees someone a future position, but they want to know, people do want to know what they're working for. As a funny add-on, I will share another common theme about, we'll just call them the newer generation of employees. There was another term I hadn't heard called your social battery. So when you're really dealing with various generational levels of employees, not everyone ticks the same way. And a big common factor that I've heard is catering to the social battery, really the need of a work-life balance in our kind of newer to the workforce employees, which I thought was an interesting thing to cater to. I mean, to need to be sensitive to.
Yeah, actually, I've met in our organization a person they had about 9 years lending experience, and I think they've been in the credit union space after that, now a total of about 12 years. And they've pretty much been in many different types of roles, from teller, MSR to loans to compliance, experience. They've kind of worn multiple hats, and not necessarily in those specific positions, but they've learned and helped out in different departments to better their knowledge, and I think, position themselves to potentially be able to climb the ladder. So they, I guess, increase their own personal knowledge to make themselves more valuable to the organization.
Oh, wow. I find that very, very impressive. And for those that aren't maybe self-starters in that way, but are still driven, maybe they don't know where to start, some very cool ideas. I thought they were cool. And it was kind of a shared theme, but from different perspectives. Some of the credit unions were talking about things like a virtual job fair where they would actually, video kind of a day in the life of what it's like to be in the accounting department or to be in the online banking division. And another credit union kind of, I wouldn't say one-upped them, but said, hey, and we also have a similar thing. We have kind of like a choose your own adventure where if you are leaning towards moving to accounting or the, contact center or whatever that is, really giving the additional quantifiable skills that it would take to elevate into a new role, assuming that they have all those qualifiable, soft skills, which I thought was really cool to see how they imagined turning just this digital landscape into real virtual spaces for people to learn about a job they might be interested in and see if they are lacking or there's a gap in their qualifications, how they could bolster or fill those with their own learning if they didn't, go out and find it on their own, like this individual that you used as your example.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. I think one of the things that kind of popped in my brain a little bit when you were talking about the ladder and lattice example is especially with some younger generations. I think sometimes they're not necessarily looking for how fast they can go up certain rungs, but I think sometimes just to keep people interested, in the movement, to
Mm,
find other spots for them to be able to, grow and develop within the organization. As an example, if they started out as an MSR, maybe the next level for them might be, head MSR, maybe branch manager. You've got, a different succession plans there, but sometimes people's thoughts change, and now all of a sudden they're doing kind of a lateral move to, being a loan processor or something like that. And it is great to have options out there. So we
mm.
were talking about attracting people, top talent, and when we talk about attracting, kind of on the flip side, instead of attracting them, one of the things, and I don't know if this came up and I'm curious if it came up in your guys' conversations, is um, bringing on a person that is a fit, a cultural fit, a fit to your organization's culture. Because I've heard leaders say, a lot of positions can be trained, but finding that person that fits within our organization is sometimes more important than actual having the experience of the job itself. Did culture fit come up in your guys' conversations?
Culture was a word that was circulated pretty heavily. Um, I think in the hiring space, I think cultural fit is important. A couple of specific culture items that came up were really in the career pathing space is, how do you get your organization into to adopt a culture that really sees people and sees the bench that can backfill that next level. I think that starts from the top and it works its way down. I mean, someone at any stage of the organization that is in rooms that others aren't, in the right culture, it becomes your kind of your duty and your obligation to speak the names of your great doers of your organization in those rooms that they're not in. And I think that's a cultural thing. It's sometimes, as people, we're very we can be self-serving or self-interested, if you will. So just putting on that lens, I think it could be a cultural thing, because it has to be widely adopted to really make sure that you're not only looking out for yourself, but also looking out for the bench. I think that also shows great leadership. We did find out specifically in the attracting space, one thing for our younger generation in attracting the talent. One thing about credit unions in general that might be a cultural thing is the fact that our mission aligns with the younger generation's desire to be connected to some mission. That corporate social responsibility is very important, and it lends itself very natural to credit unions, which I think in the attracting space does give us a leg up by nature. Our culture is people helping people, the service of the underserved. And I think that the younger generation, we found they are attracted to that. We just can't drain their social battery too quickly because burnout seems to be a buzzword.
Yeah.
I thought that was only for the old folks, but no, it could be for anybody.
Yeah, that is one of the great things about the credit union movement, the people helping people and being part of something bigger than yourself, I think is
Right.
something that definitely helps attract the right type of people that have that fit. Just finishing up, and I know I told you I wasn't going to keep you too long. The second part of attracting and retaining. So,
Mhm.
what were some of the common, just maybe three quick common denominators that came up in retaining top talent? Because I do know, um, myself included. I mean, from time to time, people do get, somebody sliding in their DMs or sending an email, hey, there's this spot here. Would you be open to that? So what were some of the things that came up on the retaining side of that conversation?
That's such a good question, and there were a lot of comments. You know, as you were talking there, I just was jotting something down so I didn't lose sight. But it was really there was a call to action, really to the leaders in that room. The Our network is heavily attended by executives and then of course our vendor partners, but it was really a call to action from the leaders in that room to have honest conversations with employees, and not necessarily that you have to go out of your way to initiate those conversations or promise a career path elevation, but certainly to welcome those conversations from staff that want to know, hey, you know, I've been with the organization X long. I want to end up in X position. And then, whether they need additional coaching, whether they need additional training, whether they need just your support as a manager, whether you need to have really the tough conversation about where they're falling short today, obviously in a polite, kind, and constructive way, really to just put them on the path. I don't want to oversimplify it, but we talk about, when we have to say no to a borrower in our credit union lives, we try to give them some financial education, some path to get on the road to conventional bankability. And it wasn't so dissimilar from this discussion, really encouraging honest conversations. Look, if it's a decline, they're not ready yet, you still
Sure.
want to soften that hard no with
What they can do.
exactly right, some additional resources, and it doesn't mean it's easy work, but you at least give them those steps. On the loan side, they got to go rebuild their credit. Over here, they might need to bolster certain the hard skills, or maybe it's soft skills. But yeah, really having an honest conversation and being okay with telling them where they're at. But you spin them around three times, and then make sure to point them towards the point them towards the bullseye.
Sure.
And get them walking at least in the right direction.
Well, that's good. Well, I appreciate you spending some time with us, Brandon, going over things that you guys are doing out there at the San Diego Imperial Network. Um, so to be part of that, the credit unions or their staff, the credit union needs to be part of the California Credit Union League. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Greg. Yeah, they would have to be an affiliated credit union with the league.
All righty. Well, I know that kind of limits, the people that would be listening, but I wanted to take what you guys were offering there for your network and be able to share some of the collaboration with anybody that might tune in.
I love that, and I would welcome this discussion anytime. Like I said earlier, I'm a credit union guy, and I could talk about this stuff all day long. So I just really appreciate your time today, Greg.
All righty. Well, I appreciate your time as well. Thank you so much.
Okay,
You have
you
a
have a
great
good day.
rest of your day, Brandon.
Okay, bye there.
Take care.